is already then not to the advantage of the defendant, right? So when they talk about swift justice, let me say that the reality is now the system is even more, the defendant can't defend himself, right? They put cameras into the court, right? They put more monies into the police, right? They put more monies into the prosecution, right? They put more monies into judges, right? So they put all these resources, but nothing goes into the defendant, you see? And the defendant is before the court by himself, you know. All by himself, the defendant is by in court. So they have put all the resources in the arms of the state, and is defended before the court by himself. That ain't right, you see? For persons who couldn't afford a lawyer, crown briefs. Lawyers usually couldn't do crown briefs, right? So there's this list of lawyers. It's beyond the crown briefs list. You know what they did within this last year? They used to pay a lawyer $1,000, right, to take on the case, and then $300 for area appearance. You know what they did to those crown briefs, brothers and sisters? They take away the $300 area appearance. So now you only get paid for $1,000 and for when the trial start. But if anybody know trials in this country, you know, a trial could take, you could be going to court on case management for a year before a case is start. So you got to be going to court for maybe almost a year before a case is start for free. For free. But that's what they do in the criminal justice system. They put all the resources to their advantage and no resources to the advantage of the defendant. But you know what I take out of this swift justice thing? When the people get in power, we got to do it swiftly. We got to take the resources and bring democracy swiftly. That's what I take out of this. These people in power, and they can do whatever necessary to make sure they stay in power. So that for me, you know what I take out of this swift justice? When the people come in power, we need to do it swiftly. Put all the country and the resources in the interest of the people. Swiftly. Swiftly.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, forgive me for being subjective in this matter. July 29th, 2013, the Bahamas National Citizens Coalition placed a matter before the court that involved a lawsuit against several entities of the Bahamas government over the oil issue. When we placed it before the court 2013, July 23, the 23rd of July, we had one response from the system. And that response to us was that the Office of Attorney General was going to represent the private firm as well of the Bahamas Petroleum Company. We vehemently disagreed, and from that day to now, not only has the case not come up, but we had no more communication from the court system or the government side. We know that when you talk about swift justice and so on, Mr. Dames mentioned the various entities that would have to come together in order to make this happen. But we're also talking about specialized courts and special prosecutors, etc., to expedite cases in a timely manner. This, yes, one last question. This calls for resources. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert Stewart. That will end our section of the event that deals with the 4 scripted questions. As we mentioned before, the event is being live streamed on Facebook, and so we have a question from one of the individuals live streaming the event. Each of the panelists will have 2 minutes, as they did before, to answer the question. This is the question from the Facebook Live user. What will panelists do to prevent juvenile offenders from becoming professional criminals? 2 minutes. We'll start with Senator Bell.
Good afternoon. The government is currently undertaking the development of a whole juvenile structure. As it stands right now, whenever a juvenile is charged, they're placed in the Boys Industrial School or the Girls Industrial School, the Simpson Pen or the William A. Pratt. We have had instances where juveniles are being charged with capital offenses, and given the circumstances, they're being placed in Majesty's Prison or the Bahamas Department of Correctional Services. This is an issue that I believe every right-thinking Bahamian, there ought not be any disagreement. We need to develop a separate and distinct juvenile system. In addition to that, the major issue in this country has been young men are being charged and juveniles are being charged significantly with possession of dangerous drugs, 1 gram, 2 grams. We need to develop a drug treatment court and drug treatment facility for juveniles. This is something that the Progressive Liberal Party is doing, and I encourage every Bahamian to support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The F&M government, our strategy is focused, our strategy is holistic in scope. It's also, as I mentioned earlier, multidisciplinary, multi-agency approach. And so we want to focus on education. One of the things that we have observed is that currently our focus is almost entirely on enforcement. And usually when you've shifted that focus, it's often too late. I am a big proponent of evidence-based studies. We need now that we have a University of Bahamas, we need now, and instead of just going out there and saying, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do, we need now to engage the University of the Bahamas and other stakeholders in evidence-based study. What is our problem? What's causing it? We need to get to that. We react too much from our gut. And this is what bothers me in this country. All right? You have an excellent opportunity. We say that we will focus on our communities in a big way, create programs and support existing programs that are effective to help young people, to guide them, to nurture them. We're going to focus on the education system because we say that our approach is holistic in scope and it's multidisciplinary. So it's not only from an enforcement standpoint, it's from an education standpoint, it's from a social standpoint. Of course, it's from an enforcement standpoint, but that's at the very back end, all right? But we have to do more to steer our young people away from crime. And currently we're not. We're just creating a facade, all right? And so our focus, we're going to focus heavily in the schools and in the communities and sporting programs and socialization programs that involve both young people and their parents, because we can't do this in isolation, all right? But it's important, though, that we drive this by evidence-based studies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. James. We will now have Mr. Greenslade.
Thank you. I believe that before the juvenile reaches the system, meaning the arms of the law and then everything else that follows that, we should try to place more emphasis on his or her development. The educational system is just one part of it, but the most important part of it is family development, family structure, community development, community involvement, and socialization. But once an individual has made a mistake and find themselves before in the hands of the law and before the courts, I believe the separation between juvenile offenders and adult offenders should be distinguished. And where our systems don't provide for the proper rehabilitation and reintegration into society, we can make improvements. Some of the tools available to us right now in our law enforcement area of our justice system is the electronic monitoring of offenders. This program provides for offenders who commit minor offenses. Most of them are juveniles, but some of them are juveniles. And then you have teenagers and young adults. But those programs, if used effectively, will cause for the individual to remain in their home environment in the community and still be rehabilitated. In addition, our correctional system has to also include programs that speaks to rehabilitation and speaks to human development and speaks to individual goal orientation. And then I believe we will have the separation we need to avoid juveniles becoming criminals.
Thank you, Mr. Greenslade. Ms. McIntosh?
Yes, the Bahamas Constitution Party idea of restorative justice is very important if we are going to change the society into the next generation. I have worked in youth development since 1995, and our theme was committed to the preservation of the next generation. And so the purpose of that is so that as we put programs in place now, we will facilitate the improvement of the next generation. For the last 20 years, I have called for the National Youth Service. But successive governments don't want that because they don't want their children in the National Youth Service. But we believe that if we're going to put young people in jail for minor offenses, we can't do that. We have to have non-custodial sentence. We have to focus on improving their socialization. We have to improve their family life. I think it's important that as a society we must do that. I think even persons who are in jail now, we must release some non-violent offenders, let them serve with an ankle bracelet and community service, put them to work in a jobs program. That's something I started to talk about earlier. We must increase the use of the ankle bracelet for these non-violent, non-custodial sentences, because we want people to be at home. We don't want to make criminals of young men. They're all going to jail and their children are growing up without fathers. We must find a way to make sure children have fathers, and so we must remove how we govern this way of just enforcement, and we must do it with compassion and with mercy so that children will have their fathers. They can work, pay the state back, pay their victims back. It is very important that those things happen if we're going to change the society for the next generation.
From juvenile offenders to professional criminals. You know, the first question tonight I said, you know, we have a society where there's no hope. You know, ain't no hope in this society, man. Even for educated people, you could be walking around here with all kind of degree and you can't find no job around here. You know, ain't no hope in this society, you know. And them 10 youths who I talked about this morning who was in the juvenile court, they just reach. They 14 and 15, they just reach on this earth. The problems, they meet these problems here, you see. However, I don't care what crime that you believe that they have committed, they just reach. You see, they just reach. And what person in society ain't never make a mistake? Which one I say never make a mistake, man? If my daddy didn't send me my brother off to school from this rock to try to get a living education, we'd have been a part of the system. Y'all think it's a game, man. Y'all didn't say no joke. It's a serious thing. I'm telling you, we'd been a part of the same system. I ain't joking. That's real talk. I was in CDU the other day. I see like six to eight young fellas coming from, they have on the Army uniform, you know, that's part of the squad, and they was coming in, but you could see they new recruits. But you could see, a year ago, they probably was on the blocks with their boys. They ain't no different from this youth, so they locking up. They ain't no different from, you could look in their face and see, a year ago, they was on the blocks too. The society wasn't even allowing them to take part in the society. And now it's allowing them. Only some people could be police, some people could be customs. That's how the society built, man. We gotta take control of this society and believe in our young people. That's what we gotta do. See, in a society built in our own interest. That's how we can start them going from juveniles to be professionals. You see, we gotta take control of the society, man. Build a country in our own interest. None of us in your perfect. No mistakes I didn't make in my life. Come on, man.